From KCRW, I'm Kim Masters, and this is The Business.
I called him and I spoke to him and I said, oh man, I don't know, I'm fearful about this, I don't know if I'm the right guy. And I went, okay, why you're fearful? And I started to make a little bit of Hannibal Lecter to him. I was the psychoanalyst to him.
Director Luca Guadagnino desperately wanted Armie Hammer to star in his new film, Call Me By Your Name. But Hammer wasn't so sure he was the right man to play Oliver, a closeted graduate student dealing with a powerful attraction during a summer in 1980s Italy. Guadagnino tells us about starting as a consultant, but ending up as director of the film, and about calling in favors to shoot the entire movie in just 5 weeks. But first on the news banter, will Justice League keep up the momentum that Warner's finally found with Wonder Woman? Stick around, it's The Business from KCRW. I'm joined by my amico in banter, Matt Bellany. Hello, Matt.
Ciao.
We'll do a little Italian today in honor of our guest. So, as we're speaking, Warner Brothers has been rolling Justice League into theaters. And this is, again, Warner Brothers, these movies are freighted with expectation every time. Of course, these are passionate fans for these types of movies. Marvel has been killing it, most recently with Thor Ragnarok, and that's a B-level character. That's not even the A-level Marvel people or heroes. Meanwhile, Warner's, which, announced a while ago that they're dating these things far into the future and that they're absolutely critical to the studio's strategy, has done okay, not great with these movies so far. Wonder Woman is the best performer, but this looks like it's going to be another one that's a little bit, it's a not satisfying victory, if that.
No, and, if you take a bigger corporate look at Justice League in the context of Warner Brothers, a number of red flags arise. This is all about management of the franchise, and if you look at the production of this movie, it was just kind of a mess. The original director, Zack Snyder, left the project. He had a personal issue. They brought in Joss Whedon, who directed Avengers for Marvel, and he, I guess, brought some of his own sensibility, but left a lot of what was there before. So you end up with this kind of mismatch of genres and sensibilities, and critics really noticed. It didn't do well with critics, and we'll see if fans embrace it. But whereas Marvel has been able to land the plane, so to speak, it doesn't look like DC has been able to land these movies in a way that satisfies fans.
Yeah, I think that, we've seen the last of Zack Snyder. He was supposed to oversee this, and this is a choice that did not really work out for Warner's. Now they've brought in Jeff Johns, who's a true dyed-in-the-wool DC immersed in the lore guy, to try and fix this problem. And I think Justice League may turn out to be kind of the last of the Zack Snyder errors or not quite successes. And again, they make a lot of money at the box office. Justice League in particular had to be extremely expensive because Joss Whedon had to do reshoots and try to fix whatever had been shot already. And I can't give, Zack Snyder any benefit of the doubt on that. So this one must have cost a damn fortune. And so when you see those big grosses, sometimes people reach out and, in the social media and say, well, we made this many $100 million. What's the problem? The problem is the cost of making and then marketing these giant movies. It has to do huge numbers, not just, strong appearing numbers.
Yeah. And if you look at the DC Universe movies, there's Man of Steel, there's Batman, Superman, there's Justice League, and then there's Wonder Woman. One of those movies did well, and it's the one that didn't have anything to do with Zack Snyder.
Yeah, so Patty Jenkins obviously did that one. They want to bring her back. This has been a bit of a sticky wicket, in terms of the Brett Ratner of it all, the producer whose money was supporting these movies. Gal Gadot said that she did not want to be in these movies if Brett Ratner was involved, and he has been booted off the Warner lot in the wake of allegations of sexual misconduct, and pretty serious allegations. I mean, not just on the spectrum of these allegations. These are very serious allegations. So he's gone. I don't know how the money is gone from the company that was called Rat Pack, that was his company, that's now probably going to change its name so that people won't think it has the smell of the previous guys who were, the Brett Ratner and James Packer, the Australian billionaire who came up with this thing in the first place. I guess they'll call it something else and say Ratner's not involved. I guess, are they stripping his credit off?
Well, here's what's going on. Rat Pack Warner Brothers deal was for 75 films, and that is scheduled to expire in April with this Dwayne Johnson movie, Rampage. So that is coming to an end. There was speculation before the sexual harassment scandals that Warner Brothers would re-up that deal in some capacity and would accept more money from Rat Pack in exchange for a stake in more movies. My understanding is that now that is not going to happen, or they will do some deal with a non-Brett Ratner affiliated entity, whether it's Rat Pack under another name or something else. But there was never really a chance that Rat Pack would have money in Wonder Woman 2 because that deal is set to expire.
However, Rat Pack was still, involved with Justice League. And we can note that two stars in this movie, Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck, didn't walk the red carpet at the premiere, avoiding questions. I assume that Gal Gadot didn't do it because she didn't want to be asked about the Brett Ratner of it all. What do we think Ben Affleck was avoiding?
Well, according to Hollywood Reporter's critic on this movie, he looks like he would rather be anywhere else but in this movie, So I don't know that promoting this movie is high on Ben Affleck's priority list. He's had to answer a bunch of awkward questions as well about some of his prior behavior and his relationship with Harvey Weinstein. I just think that, he would rather not be asked that stuff.
Yeah. The other thing that was sort of notable as Warner's is trying to make this movie go is this reveal of its Rotten Tomatoes score. And, Rotten Tomato was trying to turn its reveal of its scores into a thing. This is a show on Facebook called See It or Skip It. And so they delayed, and then they finally did reveal, this is the first time it's been done for such a big movie, a 40%, as we're speaking, Rotten Tomatoes score, which is, not exactly what Warner Brothers would have wanted to see.
No, the big drum roll, and then it's a gong.
And Warner's owns 25% of Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
so.
The fact that Warner's has a piece of the parent company of Rotten Tomatoes led to some speculation that it was utilizing that pressure to hide the Rotten Tomatoes score. I don't know if that's true because I know it's part of this larger Facebook video strategy. But the fact is, studios are terrified of that score now. They know that it circulates in social media. It's on the ticketing websites. And if you have a low score coming, it makes sense that you would try to do everything that you can to hide that score.
And yet, having done it in this one, it only highlighted the score. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
That's Matt Bellany, editorial director of The Hollywood Reporter. The new film Call Me By Your Name, based on the 2007 novel of the same title, is a sensuous coming-of-age love story set in northern Italy in the 1980s. As the movie begins, the Perlman family is awaiting a visitor. Michael Stuhlbarg plays Lyle Perlman, an American professor who spends summers with his family at their Italian villa. For 6 weeks, his 17-year-old son, Elio, played by Timothée Chalamet, has to give up his usual bedroom to accommodate 24-year-old grad student Oliver, played by Armie Hammer.
Elio, Oliver, Elio.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you, Elio. You must be exhausted.
A little bit.
Come.
May I bring your things up to your room? Sure, yeah.
My room? Follow him. You're very welcome here.
See.
Our home is your home.
As the summer progresses, so does the relationship between Elio and Oliver. Call Me By Your Name earned raves when it premiered at Sundance, and it's now an awards contender. The director of the movie is Italian filmmaker Luca Guadagnino. His previous movies include I Am Love and A Bigger Splash. We recently sat down to talk about Call Me By Your Name, but before we did that, of course, we chatted for a moment about the topic on everyone's mind in Hollywood, the continued unmasking of sexual predators following the downfall of Harvey Weinstein.
I think that these events that are happening now all together at the same time in this last 2-3 months, but that we knew on the backstage of things, or
right.
There were elements coming
Gossiped
off
about,
here and
yes.
there. It's interesting that it's happening now in this very precise moment, in my opinion, because it's really about a position of power.
Yes.
And it has to do with a global, die-hard position of patriarchism, an exercise of power through the lens of a sort of quite old-fashioned patriarchism that is resisting. And as we know, the dying beast is the most dangerous one, So I would analyze that in the first place. Because, it's important to talk about these things, and it's important to expose past sufferings and to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore again. But the way that can be, in a way, wiped off is by understanding deeply how do we exercise in our own lives, even in the small things, because there are the extreme terminal situations of rape and harassment, but there is also the abuse of power that can be something small. But 100 little abuse of powers, they make a strong, powerful position of power.
Well, so let's pivot from that and talk about your background. You're sort of a self-invented. You didn't go to school. You deliberately were someone told you don't go to film school, right?
Yeah, I didn't. How did you got that?
I just do a little homework.
Good research. Well, yeah, that's true. I had my Super 8 camera when I was like 7 or 8. I don't remember. Very young. I saw this object in a window, and I wanted it. And I pestered my mother. I wanted until she bought it to me. And I didn't know what to do with it, but I was still already fascinated by cinema. And I started to invent myself with this camera. And I grew with this notion of being a director. And then a few years later, I was like 19 or 18. And it was the time in which, after the high school, you decide what to do. And I had the great luck of going to see a theater performance by the great filmmaker Jean-Marie Straub. And he was doing a play, and I was in Sicily, and he was in Sicily. And I had the privilege of going there because a friend of mine, the father of this girlfriend of mine, who was my colleague in university, was the cultural attaché on something that we're doing that thing. And we sat in this dinner after the show with the great Jean-Marie Straub, which already I was shaken by his own physical presence. And my friend said to him, Mr. Straub, so what film school he should do in order to become a director? And he looks at me with his feisty and fierce eyes of great intellectual and someone who is really exactly not interested in power. And he goes like, oh, no film school for being a director. If you want to be a director, don't do film school. And that made a big impression on me. So I kept self-analyzing cinema, like watching movies, reading a lot of interviews to directors. I would say that equally watching films and reading the testimonies of filmmakers has been my university in film, my film school. And then I started to make my little documentary, my little short film, my little first feature film. And I would say that I'm still learning and I'm still making my first feature film.
You're still making your first. Okay, well, I'm be very excited when you really finally do make your first feature film. So how does Call Me By Your Name come to you?
It's really casual and has nothing to do with the blast of an inspiration. I was asked to be a consultant because the Peter Spears and Howard Rosamund, the original producers, and they who are already still the producers of this film.
I'm sure they're very happy right now, yes. Because it was a while for,
10 years. Yeah. They wanted to make this film with a different colleague who had written a different script. And they didn't know anything about producing in Italy. And in the book, it's not said where it is set.
Right.
So they said to me, can you give a look at this book and tell us where it's set? And
so you're just a consultant.
I was a consultant. Then I was I was going up in the ranks. Consultant, executive producer, actually Italian executive producer, producer. And then just the 24th hour, 25th hour, I became a director at the last minute, let's say.
Which hour is it? Yeah, like one of those hours that's where it's late.
Yes.
So James Ivory was involved.
James has been involved as well from the beginning.
He was going to direct at one point.
Well, before he was a sort of godfather of the project. He knew the first director involved, and he knew very well Peter and Howard. And I think Peter and Howard felt that there was a sort of DNA of the Merchant Ivory brand in this project
Morris and those
at large.
Films, yeah.
And the vision of Italy through the perspective of the foreign, the Anglo-Saxon foreign. So he was around the project as a godfather. And I met James right after the death of Ismail Merchant when he came to Italy to promote The White Countess. And we became friends. And then Peter knew I was friends with Jim. And so he said to me, what about going to talk to Jim and see if Jim would be interested in doing this movie? So we went to sit with him at Claverack, his house in the Hudson Valley. And it started like kids playing with the new toy. What do you think? I said, oh, that's why not? So we started to think, okay, we write it together and then James directs it. And so he came to my place in Crema where we shot the movie.
Which is actually your place where you live.
Not the house, the village.
The village, right.
And so we started to really work on the kitchen table, on the script, on moonlighting. There was basically at the beginning no contract, nothing. It was like, let's see what we would do of it. And when we finally, a year later, got the script, people liked the script very much. So we said, okay, great. We're going to be producing the new movie by Jim Ivory, which for me, as a cinephile, I love directors. My companion is a director. I am very drawn by the figure of the director. It's something that fascinates me a lot. So for me to be a producer of a movie like a legendary filmmaker like James, it meant a lot. And we tried, and we tried, and we tried, and we didn't succeed. Because the movie was a bit costly compared to what ended up being. And it has been a harsh lesson because I'm a very optimistic person. I think whenever you have a group of people and you have something good, the thing is going to happen. But it was very difficult. We even decided to be doing a co-direction in order to squeeze the time. Because at the beginning it was like 12 weeks of shoot for Jim. But then I said, let's co-direct it and maybe whenever Jim needs to stop for the day, I can take over.
He's, I believe, 89 years old.
He's going to turn 90 in May, yes.
So was the problem that he didn't have the stamina, that his vision was too expensive? I can't quite get
I think the problem is ageism.
Ageism, okay.
I think that's the problem. I don't see as a problem the fact that James Ivory version was more expensive, Because, you can make something happen if you really want. I think that we really got that from the marketplace, that was that. And I'm sad to say that, because, first of all, films from directors in their late part of their career often are astonishing. Like if you think,
and often not. It's kind of some directors age very well, and some directors have a moment, and then they seem to lose the feel.
But there were good producers around a legendary director. It depends. It didn't happen.
Did people say the words, or that?
Sometimes they did.
He's old.
That was bad. And I'm sad because I would have loved to see "Call Me by Your Name" by James Ivory. But then there were some people saying, "Oh, well, Luca, why don't you direct it? I just had made a Big Splash." And so Jim blessed this thing, and it came with a third of the budget. It was like... Because I did it in 5 weeks instead of 12.
5 weeks, that's crazy.
We shot in 5 weeks. We shot in my hometown. I had to ask a mountain of favors to every single body. We didn't pay anybody. Like the DP made it almost for free. And he said, let's make it because we believe in this. It was, for me, mostly I did it for Peter Spears and Howard and Andre because...
You knew them before?
I knew them before. I was following this project for so long. Of course, I was affected by the story, by the characters. And once I started to put my hands on it, the idea of shooting in my hometown, to shoot this countryside that reminded me, and we go back to the cinephile, Bertolucci, Renoir, it meant a lot to me. Of course, Timothée Chalamet, who was in this project as an actor attached before me being the director, felt for me the really perfect choice for playing that role. Armie, I always loved him.
Yes, The Lone Ranger.
I think Lone Ranger is a real undervalued great film. And he was fantastic in it. He was fantastic in The Social Network. He was fantastic in J. Edgar.
Right. And he's fantastic in this.
Thank you. That I can't say. You have to say.
I'm saying it. Coming up after a short break, director Luca Guadagnino tells us about the possibility of a Call Me By Your Name sequel. You're listening to The Business from KCRW. This is The Business, and I'm Kim Masters. We're talking to Italian director Luca Guadagnino about his new film, Call Me By Your Name. The movie is a coming-of-age tale and a love story between two young men. Elio, played by Timothée Chalamet, is the teenage son of a professor who has hired a research assistant, a grad student named Oliver, played by Armie Hammer. When Oliver first arrives, Elio shows gloomy adolescent hostility to him, but as they spend more time together, his feelings start to change.
Is there anything you don't know?
Boundless by the time I cry.
You only knew how little I know about the things that matter.
Build your walls around.
What things that matter?
White noise, what an awful sound.
You know what things.
Timothée Chalamet had already been cast as Elio when Guadagnino took over the role of director from James Ivory, but the search was still on for Oliver. Guadagnino immediately thought of Hammer. Now, I read he was reluctant to take the part.
Slightly. Because as per Jim, the script was more graphic in the depiction of scenes. And I said to myself, let's not purge it. Let's send it like that. Because, it's the spirit that counts. And if an actor is taken aback by a description that is graphic, that's not the right person then.
Right.
So we send it like that. And then I got a call from his agent saying, okay, he wants to talk to you on the phone, which was nice. Sometimes they pass without even talking to you. Actually, all the time. I called him and I spoke to him. I said, oh man, I don't know. I'm fearful about this. I don't know if I'm the right guy. And I went, okay, why you're fearful? And I started to make a little bit of Hannibal Lecter to him. I was the psychoanalyst to him. And I had my one-liner. I remember the Kubrick first feature title called Fear and Desire. And I said, I believe that you should understand that your fear can be also your desires. He was fearful of the level of intimacy, not in graphic and physical, but how this movie asked for someone who was going to be completely devoted to the camera in a way that sometimes through the filter of drama, plot, you may cheat, But this movie has no contrast, no narrative dynamic. It's that. You have those two boys.
He's got to be the one, right?
Yeah.
And he was worried about his kids, I think, too, right?
Well, he thought, what happens if in time they see me being so intimate in a movie? But at the end of the call, he said, I'm in. And I called the agent. He said that he's in. And he goes, what? He was going to pass anyway.
When Armie agreed to be in the film, had he met Timothy?
No. And neither Timothy had met Armie. But I had trust in both. I know where you're going, probably. The chemistry, right?
Well, I'm just wondering how we've heard about some cases where a director is particularly managing the introduction, where you have these two characters where the attraction is so essential. And, I don't know, did you just say, meet this guy, or did you?
First of all, the premises of everything is that I felt that because I had a very great chemistry with each of them, they have had to have between them.
It's like an equation.
It's an equation,
right.
Yes. And then that day, I think that he arrived. Armie arrived, because Timothy was already there since a month.
In Italy.
And I remember they bumped into one another in the courtyard of my building. And it was fantastic. It was Oliver and Elio. Hey, it was great. They got the bikes and they went into biking. It helps a lot when you have intelligent and generous collaborators like Armie and Timothy. Armie in particular is infectious. He is somebody who really believes as a filmmaker to the movie, on the movie. It's not someone who says, okay, call me when I'm ready, when you are ready, and I act and I off. No, he is like a collaborator. So he's part of the engine. And his kind of leadership in showing complete generosity to the project helped a lot.
So given that he had reservations, did you have to work in a particular way to
I think those reservations went away after our call, to be honest. When he said, I'm in, he never came back to that.
There wasn't a sort of physical shyness about playing that guy.
It was a little bit like when Giulia Piersanti, our formidable costume designer, showed him the little shorts. And, he has very long legs. And she said, go and try. And he went there and he was not coming out. Said, come on, show us. That was a bit moment of shyness. But after he started wearing them and he was going back in his own clothes after we wrapped, he was uncomfortable with his own clothes because he'd become Oliver.
Now, Timothée Chalamet, he spoke French, I think.
He's French and American. The mother is American, the father is French. He grew up in New York, but he
grew
spent a
up.
lot of summers in France.
So he's bilingual, but he didn't have Italian. He had to
No.
be trilingual in this
yeah,
film.
yeah.
Did he come early to pick it up? Or?
He got some Italian lessons in America. Then he moved to Italy like a month and a half before shooting, and he got Italian lessons, guitar lessons, piano lessons. He was getting friends with other kids in town. He was becoming a cremasco, someone from Crema.
And so with Armie and Timothy, with the characters, the boy is an underage boy, but somehow people seem to be willing to accept in this movie, which if it were, I don't know, if it were a girl,
Well,
it might be different. I don't know.
Well, I have an answer that is immediate. Like in the movie Dirty Dancing, the character played by Jennifer Grey and the character played by Patrick Swayze, they have a difference in age that is the same as in my movie.
Aha.
She's 17 and he's 24.
Precedent.
And I don't remember any topics raising out of that love story that was a huge success at the time and people were like
Still
swooning
people
about it.
swoon to this day.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's an artificial topic, the idea of the age difference, because the dynamic that can be raised and worrying about the age difference would be some predatory and dynamic soaked in power. We go back to the beginning. In this movie, Elio, the 17-year-old, is the one who is pushing the envelope to Oliver. And Oliver is in a way running away from it. He says to him, we must behave at a certain stage in the story. But Elio's driving force of his desire is unstoppable. And also, they are two boys. Both are two boys. It's not like a man and a boy. Those are two boys.
Is it correct that you're going to do a subsequent film 3 years later?
I believe that those characters, and when I say those, I mean Elio and Oliver and Mr. Perlman and Annella and Marcia. I think that there is such ripeness about these characters. Their existence goes beyond what is on screen in a way to me. And also because in the novel by Assiman, there is a coda that is like 50 pages coda that tells you what happens to these two characters through 20 years in time. It happened to me when we watched the movie at Sundance. I said, I'm a bit sad because I love these characters. I'd like to see these characters.
Everybody else is weeping.
I want to meet these people again. And it would be a great sort of cinephile attitude to make a chronicle of the stories of these characters the way that Truffaut did with Antoine Duanel, 4 movies and 1 short. And B, I think that all these actors who are such fantastic performers, they have so much more to do through these characters that it would be a joy to do. So I'm browsing a lot of ideas, and it would be great to catch up with their age in time.
Do they know?
They know.
Good. I would really like that. Luca Guadagnino is the director of Call Me By Your Name. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
And that's The Business. Caitlin Parker produced and edited today's program with production assistance from Ray Guarna. You can subscribe to The Business as well as other great KCRW podcasts at kcrw.com/podcasts. I'm Kim Masters. We'll see you next week on The Business.